Chairman of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee, Taiwo Oyedele, has urged Nigerians to allow lawmakers to complete their investigation into claims of discrepancies in the newly gazetted tax laws. His reaction follows allegations by a member of the House of Representatives, Abdussamad Dasuki from Sokoto State, who alleged that the versions of the tax laws available to the public differ from those passed by the National Assembly. In response to the claims, the House of Representatives has set up a 7-member committee to probe the matter and clarify the situation. Dr. Muda Yusuf is the former Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He is also the CEO at the Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise. He joins us to discuss the proposed tax laws and the call by Oyedele to allow the National Assembly investigate discrepancies. Thank you very much for being here. Let's start with clarity. Chairman of the Presidential Committee on Tax has urged Nigerians to allow lawmakers to complete their investigation into claims of discrepancies. How serious do you think these allegations are?
Well, these are very serious allegations because this borders on the credibility and integrity of the lawmaking process. And these things could also create credibility crisis even for the entire tax reform. So it's a very serious thing, and the earlier the investigations are done, at least to reconcile, because it should not take too much time to reconcile what was passed with what was gazetted. I think it's important that the process should be accelerated. But it's very, very important, it's very serious, because this borders on issues of credibility in the legislative process.
Like most curious Nigerians, the government saying that the law as gazetted was not altered. If it is discovered that the law was actually altered and the executive are responsible for gazetting, can such alterations happen without their knowledge?
Well, the lawmaking, first of all, this tax legislation was a very elaborate legislation. We had 4, legislations. We have the Tax Administration, we have the Tax Act, we have the Revenue Service, we have the Joint Tax Board, and so on. So it's quite elaborate. And because of the process of also the lawmaking, we have the House of Rep, we have the Senate, you have the harmonization. So it's very easy for things, to go wrong, either editorially or somehow. But what is important for me is for, the investigation to be very thorough, to know where exactly this came from, whether it was an omission in the process of harmonizing the versions from the House of Rep and the Senate, whether it was a deliberate act for somebody to bypass or circumvent what was passed. This can be discovered. So the earlier that is done, the better. But the matter is that we don't have time, for the purpose of, implementing the tax law. The tax law is supposed to be effective from January.
So if these allegations are proven, I mean, the start date might need to move. Let's talk about the investigation that has been promised by the National Assembly. What powers does the legislature have to reverse or correct an already gazetted law, or to hold those responsible to account, or to, shift the date for implementation when there is concerns about legitimacy and applicability?
No, they have the power to amend the law. They have the power to even revoke any law. The National Assembly has all the legislative powers. So even if it has been enacted, they have the power to revoke whatever law existed. So it is within their power to correct whatever error has been made. And even if after correction, if the president does not agree with them, if they have 2/3 majority, they can even veto the president. So that is the extent of the power they have. So The issue of whether they have the powers or not does not even matter. They have the power to correct whatever mistakes has been done.
Yeah, well, I mean, we will be curious to know how those alterations, if they're real, entered the document. And some analysts are saying that pending that investigation and probe, the government should suspend the application of the law. Do you think the alterations are substantial enough to warrant such a suspension? And is that suspension even feasible?
Well, if there is a decision, because it's an executive decision about implementation, it is for the government, the executive, to implement. If the arguments are compelling enough for the president to suspend implementation, that can be done. But what I think is more practical is to ensure that the contentious provisions are not implemented. Where those that are not contentious, the implementation can commence, while we reconcile those sections that are in contention as to whether, it does not reflect what was passed by the assembly or not. So that would be my own recommendation.
Okay, I mean, you've seen the versions that are in circulation. Can these alleged alterations affect citizens, especially SMEs and self-employed? And also the trust issue, the concerns for businesses. Just talk to us about that.
No, well, the most important implication is that of credibility and trust. Because once as a credibility problem, it could affect the entire process. It could even affect the entire outcome. It could affect even what those positive things that the government wants to achieve. That is the most important implication of this. But as to the generality of the reform itself, of course, there are some very good provisions in the law. There are issues about harmonizing the taxes, which is good for business and good for everybody. There are issues about concessions for small businesses. There are issues of, removing all the archaic tax laws that have been there for ages and so on. So there's a lot of very beneficial provisions in the law. It's not as if the totality of it is contentious. So okay. That is why I believe that the areas that are contentious, we can set aside. The areas that we don't have much problem with, we can go ahead with it.
Okay, what would be your quick advice to small businesses and individuals and citizens generally, pending the outcome of the probe and still having in mind that implementation is set for January?
Well, the advice would be that the sections that are in contention should be suspended as far as implementation is concerned. Okay. And there are quite a number of provisions for small businesses that will be beneficial to them. I think they should immediately begin to enjoy those benefits. And the removal of some of these archaic tax laws, I think that should be effected. The harmonization of all the multiple taxes that exist, that should also be effected. So there are quite a number of positives that we can begin to activate from 1st January 2026.
I guess at this point is to keep fingers crossed and expect the correct actions to be taken. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.